Hi, I'm Reverend Wendy Craig-Purcell here at the Unity Center in San Diego. Thank you so much for watching today. If you'd like to support the work that we do here, please consider making a contribution. Go to our website. It's easy to do. Thank you in advance for that contribution.
Reverend Wendy presents a talk that explores and expresses the truths of unity, and that there are real-world practical things that we can do to deepen our experience of spirituality and help us in our daily lives.
We've been exploring what the spiritual path is together, and intuition and divine guidance, I think, are very key elements of the spiritual path. In fact, I believe that what starts to happen when we are really conscientious about our spiritual work and when we are really on a spiritual path, what often happens is that intuition and guidance become intensified in us and stronger and clearer in us. There's also a little bit of the flip side to that, and that is that moments of great intuition, moments of real divine guidance can be the very thing that launches a person onto the spiritual path. Because these experiences of intuition, these experiences of divine guidance, often betray our logical reasoning mind. In fact, it is one of the reasons that it can seem kind of tricky. We want so much for everything in life to make real clear sense. And intuition and guidance often seems to not necessarily make sense in the moment. Nod your head if you know what I'm talking about, right? Have you ever had a flash of insight, a flash of intuition, a knowing? You didn't know how you knew, but you knew that you knew, and what you knew didn't seem to make sense to you, and you wanted to kind of push it aside. It can also be challenging if you live with someone who is highly intuitive. Your laughter suggests to me that you've had some experience with that. Because a person who is highly intuitive seems to operate, and not seems to, actually does operate at a different level and a different vibration, and often is guided in ways that seem contrary or seem odd or just don't seem logical to the person who's not that intuitive. The world is so full of mystery and awe, and it's so important to us to not be too quick to dismiss things that don't seem to make sense to us at first. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, wrote about this idea of wisdom and divine guidance and intuition. This is what he wrote. The wisdom of the heart, it is much surer in guidance than the head. When one trusts spirit and looks to it for understanding, a certain confidence in the invisible good develops. This faith awakens in us the so-called sixth sense, intuition, or divine knowing. Through the power of intuition, we have direct access to all knowledge and the wisdom of God. He's pointing us to the heart. He's pointing us to the realm of guidance and inspiration and insight that's beyond our usual forms of knowing. The word intuition is derived from the Latin verb tuere, which means to look at. And the prefix in simply means to look at within, to look at inside. The dictionary says this is a faculty of knowing without the use of the rational process, a faculty of knowing without the use of rational process. Intuition is information that emerges from within, bypassing the reasoning mind. I want to talk to you first about intuition, and then I want to talk to you about divine guidance, because I think they're a little bit different. Intuition sometimes is just knowing things out of the blue without knowing how you know them. just knowing things out of the blue without knowing how you know them. And sometimes intuition comes as a very clear voice. Raise your hand if you've ever had that kind of intuition that's come out of a very clear voice, a voice that you recognize. It's familiar, but yet it's not your voice. It's not your voice. Alexia Vanderwall helped to save her mother through intuition that expressed itself in a very clear voice to her. She was tidying her house, vacuuming, when she decided that she was going to call her mom. And so she called her just to chat while she was tidying the house, but her mom didn't answer the phone. And all of a sudden she heard a voice that said, "Help her, she's taken a box of pills." Her rational mind thought, well, that's kind of odd. And so she continued vacuuming, and she tried calling 2 more times, and still no answer, and the voice repeated itself. She rented a cab, went over to her mom, and found her mom lying on the floor and a box of pills that had been opened and obviously taken. She arrived in time to call an ambulance, get her mother to the hospital, and her mother was fine. Sometimes that intuition comes with a clear voice, a clear instruction to do something. Other times it comes with just a physical feeling, right? Have you had that? A physical feeling, something in your body, not a voice, but a sensation in the body, a gut feeling. There was a story of Clayton Robinson, man who had attended his brother's wedding in Rio de Janeiro. A few days after the wedding, he and his brother were all celebrating out at the beach. And his brother decided to go for a walk. And about a half an hour passed, and Clayton had this physical sensation in his body. Physical sensation, something's wrong. And he shouted to his friend, who happened to be a runner, "Go find my brother, something's wrong." And his friend ran and found his brother had been pulled under the water, and the lifeguards were just jumping in to try to get him. How does that happen? How does that happen? Doesn't even matter that we know how it happens. I'm not sure it matters that we know how it happens, just that it does, just that it can, and that we don't dismiss it just because we don't understand how it operates. So sometimes intuition comes as a clear voice that we recognize, though we know it is not our voice. Sometimes intuition comes as a very deep feeling that something's just not right, and we know we need to do something in response to that feeling. And other times, intuition interrupts us in our sleep with a clear message. Raise your hand if you've ever had that. Yeah, I've had that too. I wouldn't be standing here before you if I hadn't had that. Mine were nightmares that I would do this one day. Yeah, I know. And it requires that we pay attention. Intuition requires that we pay attention. One of the most amazing stories I'm familiar with is of a woman by the name of Tricia Coburn. She was 46 years old when this happened. She started to have very eerie dreams at night. And everything in her life externally was going well. She was healthy. She had 3 beautiful children. She had a solid marriage. She felt fulfilled in all areas of her life. And yet she started to have a really weird, eerie dream. And the dream was that she was standing at a barbed wire fence, and on the other side of the barbed wire fence, there were 5 beings, people-like beings, very pale, very frail, big eyes, ashen coloring. And they were speaking to her in a language that she didn't understand. And it just left her with this awful feeling, and she dismissed it. And a week later, she had that same dream, and this time, instead of 5 or 6 people on the other side of the fence trying to communicate to her in a language she didn't understand, looking ghastly ill, this time, instead of there being 5 or 6, there were a dozen. And it was disturbing to her, but she didn't know what to make of it. And then a week later, a third version of that dream happened, and this time there were about 20 people on the other side of the barbed wire fence trying to communicate with her. And she woke up sobbing. And in describing her experience, she said she was afraid to go to sleep. And she shared it with her husband, and her husband kept trying to reassure her, everything's fine, don't worry. And she couldn't shake that feeling, those images from that dream. And so she called her doctor, and she said, I want to come in for another physical, even though she had already had one only like 6 months earlier. I want to come in for another physical. And they said, no, at 46 years old, you're fine. You don't need another physical. Yes, I need another physical. There's this weird dream I keep having. So all they would do for her was to do another series of blood work. And all of that came back fine. And so she kind of breathed a sigh of relief and just thought, well, okay, and dismissed what was going on. Until the fourth time the dream came to her. And when she describes it, she says, this time there were 100 people on the other side of that barbed wire, screaming at me, pleading for my attention. And she said, and I said to them, I don't know what you want from me. Please, please tell me what I'm supposed to do. And then they vanished. She woke up, upset, not knowing what to do. And a few days later, the fifth and the final dream came to her. And in this dream, she was back at the fence, but this time there was nobody there. Nobody there. And she saw herself in the dream, on her knees, crying, saying, please help me. Please tell me what you need from me. And then for the first and only time, she heard a voice, and this time it was in English. And the voice said only 2 words to her in the dream. Look deeper. She called her doctor, and she said, what's the deepest part of the human body? And her doctor said, well, I think probably your colon. She said, I want a colonoscopy. The doctor said, you're too young. You don't need one. You don't have a history of colon cancer in your family. She said, I want one. I insist on having one. I don't care if my insurance doesn't pay for it. And when you do the colonoscopy, I want to be able to be awake to see what's going on. And so reluctantly, they gave her the colonoscopy. And while she's watching the thing go through her body, she hears the doctor say, oh, there's a huge mass here. And it was cancerous, a very, very aggressive form of cancer that they were able to remove right away, preserving her life. Intuition. To me, intuition interrupts us. To me, intuition interrupts our usual thinking, our usual routine, to grab our attention with some sort of information, some sort of insight, some sort of something that we need to know for our well-being or for the well-being of another. And even though it may seem irrational, it is so important for us to pay attention to it, to at least honor it enough to say, suppose this is so. What can I do? We say that we are to listen for and to listen to the still small voice. It's a both and. To me, guidance is a little different than intuition. Intuition seems to come unbidden in the form of a clear directive, a voice that says, do this, or a foreboding feeling that says, take action, or perhaps even, as I just shared with you, in a dream that's very vivid, that keeps recurring until we honor it with some action. So it seems to come unbidden. Whereas to me, divine guidance comes bidden. Divine guidance I'm asking for. I'm reaching out, I'm reaching within to that infinite intelligence, that infinite source of wisdom that operates or stands beneath life itself, the universe itself. And I am reaching into or reaching toward that for a higher wisdom than I seem to be able to figure out just with my own rational mind. To seek guidance in our lives, to seek divine guidance in our lives, is such an important aspect of our personal growth, our well-being, and certainly our spiritual growth. Why does it seem, though, sometimes that we don't get an answer when we're asking for guidance? Sometimes I hear that when I teach classes on seeking and following divine guidance. Sometimes people will say, I never get any guidance. And oftentimes I think that what's at the root of that is an overactive mind that's trying to figure it out or tell the guidance what the guidance is supposed to be. Sometimes it is that. Sometimes it is we're just not paying attention. We're just so busy with so much other stuff. We're expecting the answer to come right the moment we ask the question. And sometimes we're not quite ready for the answer. How we ask for guidance is very important. It's not so much the words that we say in asking for guidance. It's the real intent of the heart and the soul when we ask for guidance. When we seek divine guidance with no strings attached, meaning we're not saying, oh God, please tell me what I want to know. Please tell me what it is that I want to be so, where we're attached to the outcome. You know what I'm saying, some of you, right? But when we're really asking to be divinely guided along the path that is highest and best and most right for us, and that we are willing to listen to and for whatever answer emerges, the answers will come. The answers will come. Sometimes they can come in a way that sounds like a clear voice, because we've asked the question and the answer can come as a clear voice. Sometimes it comes as just a feeling of rightness, a feeling of peace, a feeling of knowingness. Sometimes it comes seemingly out of the blue with an image or an idea or a sense of this is the way to go or this is not the way to go. Nod your head if you've had any of the experience I'm talking about. Have you ever had sincerely asked for divine guidance and gotten an answer that you didn't like? Raise your hand, right? Do you ever do what I've done? I ask the question again, hoping I get a different answer. Oh God, please not that. I really didn't want that to be the answer. Please make it be something other than that. And what I know when I am inclined to do that is usually the guidance I've received. It's not that the guidance is at all wrong. Usually, it's absolutely right. But in order for me to implement that guidance, I might have to stretch and grow in ways that scare me. Or I might have to stretch and grow in ways that are uncomfortable. Or I might feel like, gosh, nobody's going to understand, and I might be judged for that. But what I have found is when that guidance comes, I have to act upon it. And if I will act upon it, it will always take me further down my road of growth in a beneficial way. And without doubt, every time I have ignored it, every time I have gone the other way from whatever it is, I've regretted it. Very much like the story of Jonah. He was supposed to go to Nineveh. He didn't go to Nineveh. He wanted to go the other direction, and the story says he was swallowed by a great big, not whale, I know. That's what Sunday school taught us. If you read the story in the Old Testament, and it's not a paraphrase, and it's a translation, it's a great big fish. We assume it was a whale, but it's a story. Anyway, he was swallowed by, right? It's a story. It didn't happen literally. But metaphysically, what the story was all about was he didn't want to go in the direction he was being guided to go. And so he hopped a ship to go in an opposite direction, and as he's on this ship, he causes, because he didn't listen to God, we're told a great storm came up, and the rest on the ship decided, who's to blame for this storm? Must be Jonah. Let's throw him overboard. He gets swallowed by this great big fish. And what does the fish do? But the fish spits him out right where he was supposed to go in the first place. Have you ever had that experience? You do everything you can possibly do to avoid the guidance that you've been given, only to find out that somehow God has put you exactly where you needed to be anyway. So why bother not paying attention the first time? It would save us an awful lot of time, I think, if we paid attention the first time. So what I'm trying to say to us this morning, what I'm trying to remind us of this morning is fundamentally, there are ways of knowing that are out of the normal realms of knowing. And what I am suggesting is every single one of us has the ability to heighten sensitivity and to grow in our ability to know in these ways. Part of it has to do with how receptive we are to that still small voice to begin with. Part of it has to do with how well we pay attention when we have those hunches, when we have that feeling, when it seems like we're being guided and directed. And the more that we are willing to pay attention and the more that we are willing to follow what it is we think we're being guided to do or to be, that guidance gets stronger and clearer for us along the way. And to know that we are so plugged in or can be so plugged into infinite intelligence, to know that we can be so plugged into that and that that can guide and serve us, why would we not devote some time and practice to cultivating that? And so we can begin in little ways. We can begin by simply paying attention. If you have a recurring dream, pay attention to that. Journal about it. Talk to somebody about it. Find out, think about what it might be trying to communicate to you. If you've got this lingering feeling, this lingering thought that you really ought to do X, explore that. Maybe you don't jump into it entirely. Maybe there are some little steps you can take that bring you closer to whatever that is. But don't discount it. We live in such a mysterious and wondrous universe, and there's so much that just doesn't square up in pure black and white rational thinking. But just because it doesn't, don't dismiss it. Be willing to listen to it. Be willing to let it guide you. Namaste.
Many people enjoy Reverend Wendy's talks and meditations and aren't able to attend the Unity Center in person. If you're part of our extended family from around the world and would like to help support the Unity Center, please go to our website or download our free app, which offers even more ways to connect with the Unity Center. Namaste.